So I covered a lot of useful things about Angular here. There's one last thing I want to cover before I send you off to the main content of this course. And that is how we can send HTTP requests. Let's say we want to initialize our list here, not with some hard-coded values, which we have in here, but we want to fetch that from a backend API. And that is a typical use case because no matter which application you're building, chances are high you need to store data on a server or fetch data from a server. And of course, you can do that with Angular. I'll not show you how to store it here, we'll do that throughout the course, but I will show you how to get data. Now, for that, let's first of all find a public API we can use. And for that, you can simply Google for Swappy, which is the Star Wars API, which is free to use and which allows us to fetch Star Wars characters. Now, what we can do here, for example, is we can target https swappy.co/API/people, send a request, and here's a preview. This gives us an object which has a results key, which has a couple of Star Wars characters. Now, I'm only interested in the names, but I can still use that and fetch all that data. The question just is, how do we send HTTP requests here and then transform the result or the response data to use it here? Well, first of all, to send HTTP requests, we again need to unlock this in our Angular application and therefore in the app module. For this, I import something in app module, the HTTP client module, to be precise, from @Angular common/HTTP. Now this needs to be added to imports here. Let's add it after the other Angular modules here. And now this allows us to inject the Angular HTTP client anywhere in our application where we need it. And you cannot just inject things or services into components, you can also inject services into services. So here, in the persons service, I can also add my constructor, and then I'll use this shortcut where I automatically store whatever I inject in a property, in a private property here. I'll name this HTTP, the name is up to you, but the type is not, the type needs to be HTTP client, which you need to import from @Angular/common/HTTP. And don't forget the empty curly braces here. Now we can use this HTTP client, and I want to use it to fetch my persons, the persons I start with. Now for that, I'll actually add a new method here, fetch persons, and there I will use HTTP. And then there is a get method I can execute. Get can be executed here. And get works in a way that I pass in the URL I want to send a request to. And this will be a background request sent and handled behind the scenes without our page refreshing. And the URL I want to send it to is this URL, of course. So https://swappy.co/API/ and then it's people. So let's send it to /people here without one, just /people. This will send a get request there. You can also send post requests and so on, but we're not doing that here. This now also is a generic type where we get back any data. That is kind of a placeholder if you don't know the specific format or you are too lazy to, well, type the format as I am here. Well, then you can use any. And this alone will not do anything. You need to subscribe here because this behind the scenes also uses RxJS. It's a so-called observable. And you need to subscribe to kick off that request because Angular is not sending it if no one is listening to the response. And here you indeed get back your response data. You can name this argument however you want, and I will simply log it here. So whenever we call fetch persons, this should be sent and the response data should be output. Well, we want to get our persons in the persons component. So here in ng-on-init, I will actually not initialize my person list like this because it will soon be empty anyways. Instead, I will reach out to my PRS service and call fetch persons. And in there, I then go ahead and make that request. Now, I will indeed empty my array here and start with undefined even. And I wanna, for now, only console log my response data. And I'll make sure we get a working list soon. If we now go back to the app and we reload, we of course see no list here anymore. But we do see this log, which is the response data we have. And indeed, we see there we have an object with the results key, which is a list of JavaScript objects which have all kinds of data, but amongst them also the name. Now, we want to extract that. So how can we now transform this and extract the data? Well, observables give you a rich suite of so-called operators you can use. And more on that can be found in an article or in a resource you find attached to this lecture. Before subscribing and getting the final result, you can pipe an unlimited amount of operators to this observable, which means you funnel the data you get back through all kinds of operators that can do all kinds of things. And one operator you often use is the map operator. You import this from rxjs/operators. The S is important here. And then you pass map here, and you call it as a function. Now, map takes a function as an argument, and that will receive the same data subscribe receives here. And now you can transform it and return your transformed data so that here you get your transformed data. And you don't need to rename it. I'm just doing it here to make it really clear how this executes. So here I now return my transformed data. And as we learned, there is a results property here in our response data in which I'm interested. And I want to extract that. And in the results data, to be precise, that is an array, I want to get that name. Now, since this is an array, I can use the normal map method. And this can be confusing, but this is not this map method. This is the normal JavaScript map method, which we can use on any array. And there, I get my my character here in the end. You can name this however you want to. And I want to just extract the name. So here I will call character name. And what this will do is it will throw away all the other elements or all the other fields. And instead, basically give me back an array of results here, which only contain objects with the name. Or not even objects to be precise, but just a list of strings in the end. This is how that works. And we can see this if I save that, and therefore this page reloads. Now we see we get back a list of strings here, which is of course super convenient for us to use. Now, this can be confusing, and therefore definitely check out the attached resource if observables are brand new to you. However, now we got a list of persons as we need it, and therefore here we can now simply emit persons changed, call next, and pass our transformed data. Now, this of course will also mean that we can no longer add persons, because whenever we reload the persons component, which does call fetch persons, we overwrite the old persons, or we emit our new persons, which are only the ones we fetched. But that is okay for now. I just want to show you how sending HTTP requests works. So here I'm now emitting this, and in persons component, I'm listening to this. Now let's just reverse the order to make sure the subscription is set up before we send this, which will use the subscription eventually. And let's save that and reload. And we see our list appear here after a short while when the request finished. And now what I meant is if I add something here, Michael, and I go back, well then we first of all get an error because we can't push anymore, because we actually have an undefined persons array here. But even if I set this to an empty array to which we can push, well, even if we do that, then this error will be gone. But if I go back to person list, it's instantly gone and overwritten. And that is okay here. I don't care about this app so much, but about teaching the individual aspects of Angular. And we'll build a real app in the rest of this course, of course. Now, you will also notice that deleting doesn't work correctly anymore. But again, doesn't matter too much here for me. Now, one last thing I want to show you before I conclude this is how we can show some placeholder whilst we are waiting for the response here, because that allows me to also introduce another core directive Angular offers.